E4 Media proudly brings to you E4 Sports. Sports through the eyes of veterans. Welcome, my E4 Mafia. This is E4 Sports. I am Jrei, sitting here with the Ferocious Phil. We're going to talk some NCAA football today, seeing how we are 9 days away from college football. With that, we're going to discuss the dumpster fire that is Ohio State and the destructive, toxic program that has taken the life of a 19-year-old football player. And that school would be Maryland. We also discuss the latest preseason AP Top 25. So sit back or continue working if that's how you listen. You know what? Just listen and enjoy. Who knows? You may actually agree with us. But remember, whether you like us or you hate us, follow us on Twitter at JRWithSports and at PhilipPalizzi1. Again, that's at JRWithSports and at PhilipPalizzi1. So, Phil, let's just jump right in. We've got to talk about these two football programs, Ohio State and Maryland. Phil, this Ohio State situation has gotten very, very interesting over the past few weeks. Sports journalist Brett McMurphy dug deeper into he's now former Ohio State coach Zach Smith regarding his sexual history during his tenure at Ohio State, which stemmed from allegations of Smith's ex-wife talking about domestic abuse and how she was physically harmed by Zach Smith. Now, this has been going on. Now, originally, the whole issue was Urban Meyer. Did he do the right thing? Did he come forward in a timely manner? And he really screwed up himself by coming out during media day and bringing it up. Some thought that if he hadn't, it could have got pushed down, but he decided to lie. And that's kind of what started more and more questions being aroused. And it's even gotten deeper. I mean, Zach Smith not only is just a low-life piece of crap, but then you look, Phil, at some of the stuff he did at the school.
It's embarrassing. I mean, between the several $1,000s in sex toys that he had delivered.
Yes, it was
athletic department.
It was $2,200 worth of sex toys.
Right, and then he took photos of himself in the White House. He took photos of his genitalia in one of the White House restrooms. And then the allegations of domestic abuse. And on top of that, you also have Urban Meyer changing his story. So you can call it either he changed the story or he lied, however which way you want to, spin this. But the fact of the matter is Urban Meyer claimed he knew about it, then he didn't know about it. And Urban Meyer's wife was brought into it because supposedly there were group texts that were brought up by Courtney Smith, Zach Smith's wife, and I find it hard to believe that Urban Meyer didn't know about this. And you're looking at another Joe Pa.
Well, here's the thing with what makes this whole Urban Meyer not knowing thing so unbelievable. According to the McMurphy's report, we just mentioned $2,200 worth of sex toys delivered to him at his office at Woody Hayes Athletic Center on the campus of Ohio State. There's also, the report also alleges that Smith took pictures of his male genitalia on multiple occasions, including at the White House when the team visited during the victory tour after the national championship back in 2015.
Don't forget about
But
sex.
also, exactly, But even bigger, that really kind of branched all this even further out before the domestic violence or anything, was the report of Smith receiving oral sex with a OSU staffer. Now, what's interesting about the staffer is she is no longer, according to Ohio State, she is no longer at the university. But her information can be found on the university website. So McMurphy ended up getting two stories. She left, or she left and went to a different department. Well, all this comes back to Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer says he didn't know about it, but yet he knew about the first allegations back in 15. Back in 15, and he said something. So it's interesting. This whole thing is the investigation apparently has wrapped up. The report has been sent to the Board of Trustees of Ohio State, and they're holding a meeting on Wednesday to discuss what they're going to do. It'll be very interesting. I truly believe he should be gone. But I'm going to take another look at this. Urban Meyer, ladies and gentlemen, is really not that good of a coach. Yeah, he's a winning coach. But that's it. He wasn't even a good coach at Florida. The only reason that nobody saw that was because Tim Tebow and Aaron Hernandez helped mask all of Meyer's downfalls with their gameplay.
Now, I'm going to slightly disagree with you here. Urban Meyer is a pretty damn good football coach.
He's football, yes.
As far as a life coach, no.
Oh no, absolutely.
He's
a great winning coach.
I mean, he is. Yeah, if you want to teach kids how to play football, okay, Urban Meyer is a good guy to do that. However, him being a responsible adult and being a role model for his college players, not so much. I mean, like you were saying, at the University of Florida, you had Tim Tebow, the goody two shoes, if you will,
the Saint, yes,
the Saint. The man has his religious beliefs, and he sticks by them, and more power to him for doing that. And then you have just the opposite, the evil that men do, and Aaron Hernandez, who. How many different charges did he have brought against him at Florida? And because he was a football player, they got pushed aside or never reported. I mean, there was a culture of just lawlessness.
Well, the reason why
it's seeping into Ohio State.
Well,
the tattoo for memorabilia.
That's the thing with Urban Meyer is. He has in his locker room what has been called the circle of trust. If you're a player, a top player, and you're in this circle, you can do no wrong. If you look, we've already mentioned the Saint in Tim Tebow, but we're also going to look at the center of Hernandez. But even more, I'm going to give you the Pouncey twins, Mike and Marquise, and former safety Reggie Nelson. They were also ensnared in police investigations while at Florida. But nothing ever happened to them because they were able to perform on the field. A quote from George Diaz of the Orlando Sentinel when talking about Meyer. Great coach, lousy role model who didn't give a flip about molding troubled young men into respectful adults, especially if that troubled young man helped you win a lot of games. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what parents and what people expect from these schools when we go into our next topic and talk about Maryland. Urban Meyer, yes, you are a coach. You're supposed to help bring more money into the program, which equals you got to win, equals you got to go to bowl games and all that. I understand that. But with a lot of these football players, they're on scholarship. A lot of them never had male mentors. They may have had male coaches who they felt were mentors, all that. But they're looking at this coach to set them up and help them with life, whether it be in football or out of football when they graduate. When you have a locker room and you're the head coach, yeah, you have leaders on the team, but you are that leader of that team. You have that inner circle of all the leaders on defense, leaders on special team, leaders on the offense, and you meet with them and, just like the military. You go down the chain of command and all that. So you have yours. But you've got to teach your guys how to teach the younger guys. If you're this guy that's just, you're a star, I don't care what you do, you're setting up everybody for failure.
I got a fantastic idea. All these guys in the NFL that are protesting and want to make a social statement and they want to do something good, take some of these college players under your wing. Start teaching them how to be men.
Yes.
Teach them how to live life properly. Teach them what's right, what's not right. I mean, you guys want social justice? There you go. I mean, hell, teach these guys how to make a difference in their communities.
And I can't go on. I can't go on to the next topic because you kind of started saying it, but we're going to talk about it right now. Is people look at Ohio State? Oh, they won a championship in 2015. Urban Meyer, did the fantastic. No, if you really look at what happened to Ohio State, he came into an even more jacked up situation than what he was leaving in Florida, and he left Florida in a very broken program. They're still trying to get out of the Urban Meyer experiment.
10 to 20 years. They're at least 10 years out of.
Yes.
I mean, he left them 10 years behind on everything.
So the only thing that helped Urban Meyer is he walked into a situation at Ohio State that was an alien program that already had violations from NCAA, and that was because of the whole tats for memorabilia scandal. When players were selling their championship memorabilia, all of this stuff so they can get tattoos. Well, they got violations. They weren't allowed to enter a bowl game. So he entered a program that was always ailing anyway. So no matter kind of what he did, Urban Meyer was automatically going to be looked at. Oh, he's helped saving the Ohio State team. Well, guess what, guys? He's also destroyed it. He's the one that hired Zach Smith. That's why I believe Urban Meyer should be let go. That alone, you know what kind of person he was and how you don't know about the sex with the staffer, the sex toys getting sent. Okay, if you may not know about the pictures because they were sitting with his phone, which, by the way, that is a school phone. It is a company phone, which adds all new charges to anything if they come up.
Don't forget, Ohio State is it's not a private school, it is a public school. Thus, you are under a wealth of different rules and regulations that you're going to have to abide by. That's why the committee's having to meet 24. They're having to announce 24 hours prior that they're meeting.
Yes, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting what we get out of this. Phil, what do you think the consequences can be for Urban Meyer?
From what I was just reading earlier today, you're going to have the board meeting, and it's a pretty good sized board. However, the university president wants to push for a suspension in which Meyer's going to be suspended for X number of weeks and then be allowed to coach again. And there are also some other people that are trying to push for a time served suspension, meaning you've been on paid leave for 2.5 plus weeks, and you just get to walk in and coach the first week, which, you're getting paid for not doing diddly other than trying to defend yourself against fairly heinous charges. And I still think Meyer should be. I think Meyer should be let go. It's not the first time he's been involved in something like this. We already discussed his tenure at Florida. He's done it once. He's done it twice. It's just like, hey, if you date somebody who's cheated on every one of her boyfriends prior, what makes you think she's not going to cheat on you? I mean, like all of a sudden, you're the end all be all. No, this is going to be a continued practice that Urban Meyer does. Every school he goes to, there's going to be some cloak of doubt about whether the program's clean or not. I don't think Urban Meyer can go to a program now and not have that onus of, well, what's going on behind the scenes? Yeah, you're a good football coach, but as far as life coach, how you're leading these young men into adulthood is questionable. I don't think Urban Meyer is the guy to do it. I don't think Urban Meyer is necessarily the guy to be leading the team in doing this. And maybe it's just time. Maybe he just goes into the broadcast booth and sails off into the, broadcasting college football.
I don't give a shit what he does afterwards, but he needs to be fired.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, I'm just thinking the most likely thing if he gets booted, what's he going to do? He's probably going to maybe sit out for a year and try and clear his name a little bit and then go into broadcasting. There is that market.
Only the future will tell. Yesterday, the NCAA released the AP Top 25 poll preseason, and we will be going over the top 10 AP Top 25 poll for preseason NCAA football. At number 10, we have Penn State coming out of the Big Ten. They ended number 8 last year with an overall record of 11-2, conference record of 7-2. How do you think their outlook is, Phil?
Penn State has a good chance if they get a couple breaks. They could contend for the Big Ten East. I think out of the West, you're going to have Wisconsin coming out of the West. Penn State's going to be they're in the tougher division of the Big Ten. I mean, you got Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State all sitting there in the East, and those are the teams that are going to be vying for that conference championship. And whoever wins, I'm going to go out on a limb and say whoever wins the Big Ten period, there's a very good likelihood that that's going to be one of the 4 playoff teams.
Now, what's interesting about Penn State is they are going to miss transcendent running back Saquon Barkley, who got drafted by the Giants. They're also going to be missing their very dynamic offensive coordinator in Joe Moorhead. But they do have Big Ten's best quarterback in senior Trace McSorley. They also have a much better offensive line depth. The thing that also helps them is their schedule. They have the home games against Ohio State, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. So that helps them a lot with that home field advantage. Maybe they can overcome that, get those wins late in the season, and maybe vie. I think they can.
The Ohio State game's like kind of early in the season, and that's going to be a big thing as far as where Penn State goes, as far as the rankings go. Because right after Ohio State, they play Michigan State. Get a little. I mean, I don't really want to call it a break, but I mean they're not going to be playing. These teams may be ranked, they may not be ranked, but then they play Indiana, they play Iowa, then they got Michigan and Wisconsin back to back. So I mean, you got those two little sections of the schedule where you're playing back to back highly ranked teams that are going to test your mettle.
And let me tell you, don't sleep on Iowa.
Oh hell no!
After what they did with
Iowa's always a great coach team.
After what they did with Ohio State last year, You can't sleep on Iowa. So if you even look at that, if you're not going to sleep on Iowa, I see that could be a challenge. I mean, even though you are playing them at home, but you got Iowa, then you go to Michigan, you come back against Wisconsin. Your last two games, I could see it going your way. You got Rutgers, Maryland. I could see that, but you do have a tough schedule. So I can see you ending in the top 10 again this year. Besides that, I don't see a lot really happening with you based upon those. Yeah, you don't have a huge tough schedule, but the tough games you have, I hate to say it, I would have to say are going to go the other way.
I think the Ohio State game's the key game. That and the Wisconsin game. If they can get past Wisconsin, then there's no reason to think that Penn State won't be in the playoffs. And that's provided everything else goes right, of course. I mean, they're going to have to for Penn State to make it into the playoffs, they're going to have to be undefeated, which I don't think is going to necessarily happen.
I don't think it will be. At number 9, we have Auburn, who ended number 10 last year with a record of 10-4 and an SEC record of 7-1. Now, as I had said earlier, Auburn is that underdog team that people always want to count out. But
their schedule is brutal. I mean, as much as I like Auburn, they start off on Labor Day weekend against Washington, at Washington. Or, sorry, they're playing at Auburn. Nonetheless, Washington is no slouch. Washington's going to come in fired up for this game, and just looking at the rest of their schedule, I mean, they end the year, their last 3 games, at Georgia versus, then they have, they basically end the season against Alabama, at Alabama.
I mean, they do have a tough schedule. Like you said, they have Washington, you've got LSU, and LSU and Auburn always play each other hard. Always.
Arkansas.
You got Arkansas.
Is no slouch.
Razorbacks are no slouch. You got Southern Miss. I can give you that one. But then you play at Mississippi State. You come back home for Tennessee. Then you go to Ole Miss and Auburn. That's another rivalry. Very enjoyable to watch.
And even though Ole Miss is currently under suspension.
But those players still want to play.
Oh, yeah.
Then you got A&M, and at that moment in time, like I said, A&M could surge up those polls, and they could be a ranked team. Then, like you said, to start off those last 3 games, you got Georgia, Liberty, okay, I can give them. And then you end at Alabama. Alabama may not be where they are ranked, but they're going to be Alabama's going to at least be in the top 10, if not top 5, come the last game of the season.
Not to mention, I mean, that is a traditional uber in-state rivalry game. And, in Alabama, as far as the state of Alabama, I'd say it's probably split about 75-25 Alabama to Auburn fans. But, man, Auburn will come to play. And I think Auburn gets more joy out of beating Alabama and just being a thorn in Saban's side than, just about anything. So that's gonna be a hell of a game. That's gonna be a hell of a way to end. That'll be a hell of a way to end the season.
All right, at number 8, and I know you are chomping at the bits to talk, and I will let you talk in just a second. But at number 8, we have Miami. Miami ended last year at number 13 with a record of 10-3 and an ACC conference record of 7-1. Now, they have most of their key players returning on both offense and defense, though they cannot afford to take a step back. The division is a pretty good division. To make it successful, they've at least got to go back to the ACC championship, and they need to have another win over Florida State. So with that said, our in-house Miami expert, Phil, how do you feel your Hurricanes are going to do this year?
I think the Hurricanes are going to definitely be back in the ACC championship, facing Clemson again. Clemson's a powerhouse. They're definitely going to be there. I think Miami will definitely have a better showing against Clemson than they did last year. And Miami's schedule is favorable, I believe. They have a good mix on their schedule. They open up at LSU, or they open up against LSU in Jrei's World up at AT&T Stadium. Then they play Savannah, which Toledo, not so much. And they basically, you go down their schedule. They got Florida State at home, in Miami, and that's going to be at the beginning of October. I mean, their schedule is very favorable. You got
the schedule. You have a very favorable schedule this year.
I mean, you got Georgia Tech, but the ACC teams. I mean, they do play each other fairly well. Miami's got a lot of starters coming back. Malik Rozier is been looking really good in the scrimmages. Defense, you got 7 of 11 starters coming back. And
my question for you then is, with their strength of schedule, could that be an issue later down the line when it comes to end of the year rankings based upon y'all's schedule?
It may be. I think if Miami wins, if Miami were to be able to win the ACC, beat Clemson in the ACC title game, I think they're in the 4.
Okay.
I mean that would be Clemson. I think Clemson's going to wind up going into the ACC championship. I'm pretty sure they're going to be undefeated going in. And if Miami were to take them out, which, hey, that's why they play the games. It could happen. I definitely think Miami should be able to have a chair at the table. Yeah. I think Miami goes into the ACC championship undefeated.
And goes up against Clemson, and then that's who's going to decide.
I think that's going to be the big decision is the ACC championship. I mean, looking at the schedule, I think Miami has a very good chance of going undefeated. It's very favorable. They got Florida State in Miami. And, like I said, Miami is as much trash talk as there is between Florida State and Miami, and the fact that you got guys that played against each other in high school. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of those types of little skirmishes going on there. That's going to be, Florida State-Miami game's always a great game to sit back and watch. And just, they got Virginia Tech. They're playing at Virginia Tech. That's going to be a tough game later in the year if Virginia Tech is able to maintain their ranking in the top 25.
Ahead of Miami, we have Oklahoma at number 7. They ended last year at number 3 with a record of 12-2, and they have won the Big 12 title on 3 consecutive occasions. Now, the Sooners have also made the playoffs in the past 3 years. They've been in the playoffs twice. Now, they are missing Heisman Trophy winner Baker Mayfield. They lost him to the Cleveland Browns. May God be with you, Mayfield. But the expectations at Oklahoma still haven't changed. They do have a better quarterback weaponry around the quarterback. I understand Kyler Murray is not Baker Mayfield, but he is a former 5-star quarterback recruit. So with that, he should be able to help Oklahoma maybe get back to the playoffs. They've got a what would you call their schedule, Phil?
Oklahoma's has got pretty much they got a schedule that they should be able to handle without a whole lot of problem. They do have some in the middle of the schedule. They have a couple of tough games, but it all seems to it kind of like rises. It's almost like a bell curve where, it starts off kind of on the low end and then just kind of slowly rises. You have the games against Texas and TCU, and then it kind of kind of goes downhill a little bit, kind of levels off, and then at the end you have West Virginia, who they're going to be closing the season with, and it's going to be a tough schedule. I could see Oklahoma maybe dropping a game or two, but do they make do they have a chair waiting for them with the Final Four this season? Not maybe. I don't think so, but it's possible.
I think they can take the Big 12 again. One of my biggest things is, how is Texas going to do with Tom Herman in his second year? Texas-Oklahoma is always an interesting rivalry. Red River Shootout. People in Texas don't like Oklahomians, and Oklahomians want to be Texans. So it'll be a good matchup.
The thing real quick with Herman at Texas is, like you said, he's coming into his second year. So really probably not until next year will you start seeing players that Herman had recruited and really brought in. So to get his culture going in at UT, you may have to wait one more season with Texas. But Oklahoma should be able to take the Big 12.
Well, at number 6, we've got Washington. They ended 16 last year with a record of 10-3 and a Pac-12 record of 7-2. Do not sleep on Washington. To me, they may be the Pac-12's best bet for qualifying for the playoff run. For one, you've got a rarity at QB, and that is Jack Browning is set to begin his 4th year as starting quarterback. And you don't see that very often in college football anymore. Whether it's quarterback, running back, you don't see them sticking around like that. You usually see them jumping into the draft, especially
they're going to take the money and
quarterback.
run, but NFL teams like to see a guy who's sat there and completed his college. He graduates, and for that matter, getting a little more playing time, he's going to have a little better understanding of the game. So, yes, that's having a 4-year starter. That definitely means a lot in today's game.
Let's see. Their schedule, they start off, the first game is a barn burner. And
that's going to be a test.
That's number 9, Auburn. Luckily for Washington, not so lucky for Auburn, they're going to be playing this game in Washington. Next game, North Dakota, don't see an issue. Utah, don't really see an issue. Arizona State, BYU, UCLA. So I guess by October 13th is the first time they really come into anybody that's in contention right now, and that's number 24, Oregon.
Carson Wentz might go back to North Dakota for that game. And,
you've got Oregon at number 24, and by October, who knows? Oregon may be higher or they may be out. Then like I said in the past, Colorado, they may be unranked. I think they're going to end up ranked by October the 20th. Their football program keeps getting better and better. Then they got Cal. I think I agree. I like I said in my first statement about Washington, I think based upon their schedule, they are my best bet to go to the playoffs out of the Pac-12. Yes, you're going to need that Pac-12 championship to choose it, but I guarantee you Washington will be playing for the Pac-12 championship. Their schedule, they've got a really, really favorable schedule.
That was the word I was about to use, was their schedule is very favorable. They have you got the traditional game at the end against Washington State, which will be that's always a great matchup. But just looking at their schedule and the way it rolls, they have a very you got Auburn at home, you got North Dakota at home, you got to go to Utah, which could be kind of tough, but I think Washington should be able to pull that out. Then you got Arizona State at home, BYU at home. You play at UCLA, but I think UCLA without Rosen, I just don't see UCLA being very good this year. Oregon, they by the time they play Oregon, Oregon could have slid up in the standings, but they're playing at Oregon. Then they play at home against Colorado, go to Cal, and they got home games against Stanford, Oregon State, and they got to play at Washington State. Now, if you're Washington, you don't want to go into that last game and think, hey, we got this all wrapped up, because Washington State will, they'll pull it out on you if they're not ready for it.
All right. At number 5, we have Ohio State. Ohio State ended. Let's say it this way. Ohio State is starting where they ended last year at number 5 with a record of 12-2 and a conference record, Big Ten conference record of 8-1. Now, if y'all are listening to this podcast thoroughly, then you would have heard our first segment when we talked about Urban Meyer and Ohio State. If you are listening to our AP Top 25 special, then I will say this. Ohio State is dealing with a lot of issues in the front office, all stemming from Coach Zach Smith, his allegations of domestic violence against his wife, the sex toys, the sex in the office, the
sex in the White House.
Well, it really wasn't sex in the White House. It was more lewd pictures taken in bathrooms in the White House.
The sexual scandal with one of his staff.
Yes. So they're dealing with a lot, and of course, we won't know for another few days what the consequences will be for Urban Meyer. Now, coming into this, Ohio State was being looked at number 3 in the AP polls, just like they are ranked number 3 in the coaches poll, but they have fallen to number 5 in the AP because the fact is Urban Meyer hasn't been around for 3 weeks. So he has no idea what's going on the field. He cannot have contact with any of the players, but it's Urban Meyer, so he's getting around that somehow.
Do you really believe that?
Exactly.
I'm sure people are reporting to him what's going on the field.
So that has a big thing. Now, my thing when it comes to Ohio State and their situation is 2 things can happen. One thing that can happen is that the players rally and they go up for blood. And with the senior leadership that's in that locker room, I could see them lifting everybody up and saying, hey, we're Ohio State, we're the Buckeyes, we can get past this, and they do. That's scenario. That's their best case scenario. The second case is the whole pressure of all of this could get to the players, and they just fall straight on their ass. The Buckeyes, it's still a good system, even though the head coaching situations and some of that, morality-wise, have problems. It is still a good program. But then also, depending on how this goes, the NCAA could come back and say, you know what? We're taking action against you.
Oh, yeah. And, right now, as far as the players go, they got to be kind of happy. The acting head coach, couple days ago after practice decided, hey, I'm going to reward you guys. I'm going to take y'all to a Beyonce and Jay-Z concert. I
think that would be punishment.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but it's like, so is that tough love, or is that a reward? I guess it all depends on how you look at it, but
so it's their schedule. Let's see, if we even look at their schedule, okay, they actually have a pretty nice schedule. Their first biggest challenge to me is September 15th when they go up against TCU. Because TCU, like we said when we talked about them at number 16, they are one of those teams that can come up and surprise you, and usually they do it late in the year. But with Ohio State and everything that's going on, is their mind's going to be right, and that's a tough game to play. Then you got Tulane. Tulane can play it tough, but I don't see that happening. Then they go to Penn State. That's their first away game. And I think besides later in the year against Michigan State, that Penn State game is going to be the roughest game.
How nice is this, though? I'm looking at their schedule, and out of their first 7 games,
Yeah.
only one away game out of their first 7 games, and that's Penn State.
Yeah.
Their next away game is Purdue. Then they get another home game against Nebraska, and they got to play at Michigan State, then at Maryland, and they close their season where else? At home against Michigan.
Which we've talked about that last game. It's pretty much going to say if, okay, let me phrase it this way to make this a little bit easier to come out. Ohio State, November 24th, may be the decision maker on Harbaugh's whole career. Depending on where Harbaugh is by that last game of the season, if they lose to Ohio State, he could be gone.
I'm going to make one more reference here to NCAA football, the video game. I mean, where in today's day and age do you have a football schedule where you only have 4 away games for the entire season? The entire season, you have 4 away games.
But also, Phil,
how nice is that?
But also, Phil,
I mean, that's like you made your schedule, and it's like, no, I'm gonna play at home. I'm gonna play
it's
at
a nice
home.
schedule, but who knows? This schedule may not even matter. If NCAA decides to come in on their own, the season might not even matter.
I don't think any penalties that they
you
throw
don't think
on,
this year would
well,
be?
I'm not saying that the NCAA won't put penalties on them, but I don't think they would be put into effect until next season. They may, if they do come out and say something before the season starts, which is going to have to be pretty darn quick. I mean, yeah, they could say, okay, you guys aren't eligible for bowl game.
Well, then guess what, Ohio State? Enjoy it now because you're about to go back into that black hole after the tats for memorabilia issue.
I mean, they could easily hold that against them, and then this with, the way Me Too is now and everything else, and you had the Penn State situation. I think the NCAA is going to definitely come back and say, okay, yeah, you did your little in-house bunch of BS here. I mean, trying to make it look like you suspended Urban Meyer and maybe his job was in jeopardy. But, I mean, if it comes back and they just wind up saying time served with Urban Meyer, or it's, they come up with something weak, I think there's going to be some backlash against Ohio State. It's one of those things, like the reporter said that broke this. If you're an Ohio State fan, you're hating the fact that this is all coming out. If you're not an Ohio State fan, then you're probably, you're probably enjoying this. Which, let's be realistic here. People do enjoy other people's misery. So it's very possible that they wind up coming out of this and you got everyone outside of Columbus screaming for them to have the NCAA to do something to them, and then you're going to have people in Columbus going, no, it wasn't that bad.
So when it comes to number 5, Ohio State, my prediction is they are out of the top 10 by week 3. I think this Urban Meyer thing is going to be a lot bigger. I think he's going to lose his job with the way that the climate is now. I think that is going to be a difference. They may be able to keep it, but I say if they do end the season in the top 25, I say it's 15 to 25. I don't say that they're in the top 10.
There was a story that just came out that Ohio State University will make the results of the Urban Meyer probe public. So that's going to be it's going to be interesting when they release all that, and it'll be interesting to get a better look at the allegations of how the Ohio State Athletic Department handled the allegations against the assistant coach Zach Smith, and then what Urban Meyer knew about it. Because if it comes out that Urban Meyer knew about this, he's gone. He's definitely gone. Even if he didn't, I think he's still gone.
All right, now we get into the top 4. Now, these are the playoff spots. So, at number 4 with one number 1 vote, we have Wisconsin, who ended number 7 last year with a record of 13-1 and a Big Ten record of 9-0.
Wisconsin had a hell of a good team last year.
Wisconsin is a beast like Washington. I believe they win the Big Ten West for the 3rd consecutive season. They need to win the Big Ten.
I think they take Ohio State if they go into the Big Ten playoffs.
They're looking at the most complete offense since 2011 when Russell Wilson took them to the league championship. They have a top 10 defense, even though they have lost 7 starters. I think Wisconsin finally this year can break through and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and looking at their schedule, I mean, you got games at Michigan and you got games at Penn State. Those are probably the 2 biggest games that they have on their schedule.
I don't see anybody else staying in the top.
And if Wisconsin gets by both of those, man, Wisconsin has a very good chance of taking the whole.
The one thing I will say is both those games are away. So I will say that, but when it comes to their schedule, it's very favorable that they end up in the top 4.
Absolutely, but my point being is if they make it into the Final Four, the playoff teams, I think this Wisconsin team has a good chance of possibly playing for a national title.
I agree. Now we are going to move to number 3, and that is Georgia. Georgia ended number 2 last year with a record of 13-2 and a 7-1 in the SEC. Seriously, what can I say about Georgia? Let me just say this.
They've lost a lot of talent.
But with that, I'm going to use that to say this. You're talking about a school like Georgia who produced Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith, and Lorenzo Carter.
That's a lot of talent to replace.
It's a lot of talent to replace, but it's a lot of talent to give up in the draft, too. So you're looking at a program who...
Well, they didn't have a whole lot of choice in that matter.
Well, no, they didn't, but it was with that program's help that got those guys to the NFL. And it's good to see the Bulldogs coming back into relevancy. I've enjoyed it. Georgia fell off for a little bit and was forgotten. And now I think they have moved back into the spotlight that they have deserved. Honestly, last year, I believe they should have ended 1. I believe that going into the championship game, I believe that Georgia should have been ranked number 1.
Over Alabama.
Yes. I do believe that if you look at their schedule last year and how Georgia was able to defeat teams that Alabama lost to me automatically puts you above that team. The voters didn't see that way. But as a fan, I saw that if you're able to beat teams that the number 1 team couldn't beat and lost to, then you are better than them.
Well, the reason for that, though, is Dark Lord Saban, used his powers to choke out his enemies and make them disappear.
Now, if you look at Georgia's schedule, Georgia has a very favorable schedule, extremely favorable. You go Austin Peay, South Carolina, maybe a challenge. South Carolina sometimes can give you a challenge. So maybe, but not big.
It's SEC. It's an SEC matchup.
Yeah. Then you got Mid-Tennessee, Missouri, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Then you finally go into one of these preseason ranked games in LSU. And
they may not even be
LSU,
there.
Exactly. That's if LSU stays in. Because like we said earlier, I'm surprised that they're even in the top 25.
Somebody had to get it.
Then you've got Florida, Kentucky, Auburn.
Yeah, that's going to be a big game there.
Really,
Auburn.
Yeah, and it's the third to last week. So,
but the last game on their schedule is going to be a tough game.
It is. Georgia Tech is always a tough game for anybody Georgia Tech plays, and especially for Georgia being that last game, because that last game may be the matter of who's in the last four. That last game. So. But with their schedule, I definitely say they have a chance to be in the top four again.
Yes,
this year.
Yes, they do. It's a long season, and there's lots of things that can happen.
Well, in my other big thing before we leave, the reason why I think Georgia deserved to be number one is they won the SEC. They won the SEC, which means y'all should be in over an SEC team that did not win the SEC. That alone should give it to you. But enough on Georgia. I hope Georgia can do it. So now we go down to number 2. We got Clemson. Phil, Clemson has developed a lot of great players. I mean, we live in Houston. On our team alone, we got like 6 Clemson guys. Okay, the Houston organization, yes, they did, and I like the fact that they are staying on top right now. They're not falling down. They're not moving down to out of the top 10. Hell, they're in the number 2.
Well, I mean, you're also talking about a team that's gone to the college football playoffs the last 3 years running.
Yes, and you face Alabama twice. You beat them once. They're number 2. I truly believe they should actually be number 1. And talking about this, I might as well just say it now. At number 1 is Alabama. Imagine that. Like, we didn't know that was going to happen. But I do believe Clemson should actually be number 1. For one, Clemson has a better offense than Alabama. Yes, Alabama does have a defense, but their injuries are starting to stack up in Alabama.
Alabama just got there was a freshman defensive tackle from Washington that just got the approval to move to basically go over to Alabama, transfer from Washington, and he's a freshman. So Alabama has great recruiting. I mean, everyone wants to go to Alabama. Frankly, if I'm a wide receiver, though, I don't understand why you get so many of these top wide receivers that want to go and play for Alabama when they're not a passing team.
No, they are not.
They're a running team, and they're basically there for window dressing. They don't catch nearly as many passes as you get from, other teams. And it's all the mystique of Alabama that gets them these players.
Well, you have lost 2 members of your O-line. You've now got injuries on some of your linebackers. You've got a quarterback controversy that Nick Saban doesn't want to address. He keeps saying, no, there is no controversy. All that. There is. He's got 2 quarterbacks that he won't name starters on.
But this is the Bill Belichick coaching tree standard. I mean, Saban's not going to
keep your mouth shut. Yeah.
Saban's not going to give anything up. I mean, as far as like what's going on, I'm sure Saban is the kind of guy who's going to sit there and tell the media, "Oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to address this, or this isn't happening." But he'll address it. He'll address it in behind closed doors.
And this is the reason why Alabama keeps getting ranked the way they are, and they look so beastly. Louisville, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, A&M, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee. Okay, so they're starting off right now alone with those. No one's ranked. No one's ranked.
Furman, Texas A&M, Georgia Southern, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, And then Louisville, BC, Duke, and South Carolina for Clemson. And then you got Alabama.
Yes, like I said,
coming in.
Louisville, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, A&M, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, before they even play a possible ranked team in LSU, Mississippi State, then the Citadel, and then the biggest game that Alabama really actually has is the last game against Auburn.
I mean, seriously,
that
Citadel,
is an easy-ass schedule.
Citadel in mid-November? Seriously? This is the same thing.
How do they stay number one? Their schedule is horrible. I thought
the same thing they did last year, though.
Yeah.
If you remember last year, Alabama played like the last 4 weeks. 3 of the 4 teams they played were like, seriously, why are these guys scheduled against Alabama?
Exactly.
I mean, that shouldn't even be allowed. I mean, being able to schedule. If you don't have a Division II a Division II team scheduled in the first 3 weeks, then you don't get to schedule them after that. That is absurd.
Here I go again.
And you know what that sound means? That means we are out of time here on E4 Sports. Listen to us next week. We will be talking preseason NFL football. We're going to talk about, could there possibly be a lockout coming? Also, we are going to rank the top quarterbacks and the quarterback bust from 2013 on. We're going to be looking at the quarterbacks that either made it, failed, or still has a chance in history to do something. So make sure you listen to us next week. For Ferocious Phil, this is Jrei, E4 Mafia. Keep shamming.